My guest this week is a clown originally from the Ukraine, but now living in Canada. She's a Gestalt therapist, a space holder, aura fluffer, ethical hacker, and a relational engineer inspired by mycelial mushroom networks. Enjoy the insights and wisdom of Slava Sapershteyn.
Welcome to the Clown Spirit Podcast. And here's your clowntastic host, Mr. Barnaby King.
Slava Sapershteyn, it is really a pleasure having you on this Clown Spirit Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me into this.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Slava, before we get into more serious things, you have an alternative last name.
I do.
Maybe could you tell us about that? Why
Yeah.
this name?
Yeah. People do call me Slap and Shine. And my gesture to this is slap and shine. And it is part of my one of my core essences is that I may slap, but I will shine you right after. I will not leave people just slap. And I'm speaking metaphors and
You
also
don't literally slap people. What is
I have,
this?
but I shine them right after. I kiss their pain away.
I'm glad that we're talking on Zoom because
Yes.
I can't.
If
you
you
can't slap.
safer,
I feel safer.
yeah. It won't become, you either have to push my button really like deep in between my ribs, or you have to give me consent. You have to ask for it as well.
Yeah. Do people often do that? Do they give you consent to slap them?
Some people sometimes do that. We have a relationship about it.
So tell me about the effect of slapping. When you slap somebody, what is the effect of that?
Shock. And then like actual sensations in the skin. Aftertaste, sensations usually linger. And then there is an immediate emotional response to being slapped. But context and reason makes a difference. And there is many contexts and many reasons somebody gets slapped or somebody wants to slap somebody. In the clown world, I don't know if you have ever taken a course on slapsticks.
Yeah.
That was very funny. I took one clown course, and on the day that we had one of the evenings was about slapsticks. I did it with my best friend, who is a phenomenal, most hilarious and ridiculous clown, also very serious person, at the same time, like vast. And Emma and I were in the slapstick class, and the person was introducing the slapstick class. We were standing in a circle with a bunch of people, and Emma literally walked across the circle and slapped me in the face like this. And everybody just held their breath and walloped. And the teacher was like, "Oh my God, that's not what we're going to do." And Emma was like, "Oh no, I thought that's exactly what we're doing here. I'm here for slaps." Obviously, she would not do it to strangers. She aimed for somebody who she knows, and there's expectation of reaction, and there is probably an assumption of safety. Just speaking as a Gestalt psychotherapist, that I'm also wearing that hat. So the context is important, and the drive is important.
Well, this has just already spawned a lot of questions in my head that I'm really wanting to ask you. Like, I think this is a fascinating topic. For example, what pops into my head is the real slap versus a clown slap, which is not real. It's just you go like that, and then somebody goes like that.
Well, we hold somebody's face and we do this.
There's different ways to do it, but
Different way.
it's not real. But it causes an impact, an effect for the audience. The audience thinks, oh, gets that shock. It's like a sensation of a slap, but they also know that it's not real most of the time. Now, I have seen clowns who do real slaps, And it's more, in some ways, it's a statement. It's more like performance art when you actually do the slap,
Yeah.
and the audience kind of can see that, oh, that's real. There's a red mark there. There's some
Yeah.
effect that's happened. So
Yeah.
what's the difference beyond the mechanics of it as an artist, or as a person? What's the difference between a real slap and a fake slap?
The felt, I think, the felt experiential or emergent surge. Sorry, my accent. I'm gonna correct myself. It's the emergent surge of emotion, sensation at the same time. It, that's the shock, because until there is a contact, uh, we anticipate or don't anticipate. Somebody's going to say, I'm going to slap you. There's an anticipation happening. But it's in the content, in the contact, that everything gets to be experienced.
Wow. Yeah.
And yeah, the anticipation then becomes an experience. Experience in itself is emergent because we don't know how we're going to feel being slapped. We don't know the physics and mechanics of the slapper. Is it going to be hard? Is it going to be just a touch? There's so much into it, into slapping and being slapped. But it's safe to say that the experience goes both ways for the slapper and the slapped. It is an experience that is shared. And the phenomenology is in that as well,
So
from
interesting.
Gestalt perspective.
I think you should do a workshop on slapping, actually slapping and being slapped.
I do offer workshops. I haven't done a slapping workshop, but a workshop that is not unlike that is relevant to BDSM
Yeah.
in a playful world of intimacy. And I specifically talk about flogging, which is also an array and vastness of context, sensations, anticipations, and experiences. And for me, a long relationship with flogging actually became something very specific. I call it aura fluffing.
Aura fluffing.
So I do offer sessions of aura fluffing as an experience. And also if somebody wants to learn how to do it and create their own relationship that you can name whatever it is through the experience of it, an emotional experience of it. Yes, you can come and learn.
I love it. Maybe I will.
Perfect.
The thing that it makes me think about also with the slap is it's like a wake up. It's like a sudden surge of reality that we're not used to, in a way that is a little bit like getting in the ice bath or the cold plunge. It's that experience of pain but that can be enlivening and energizing in a really positive way. And one of the nice, interesting things that you've just brought up is that with the slap, it's relational, whereas an ice bath is just me and myself and the water, but there's something relational about that too. But it's interesting that the slap involves two people. And so, as you mentioned, it involved contact. And,
Yes.
and it can be one way to explore intimacy, physical contact, the point of encounter, that place, that
Of course.
space of meeting between humans.
Yes, when we're with ourselves, it is a relationship for sure. We're not outside of it. But in using the same example, getting into bucket of ice water, there's anticipation, there's all the things, but you're reconciling with just yourself. And so you can gear your system toward expectation, towards shock, You can predict more or less it's going to be cold and uncomfortable. And so we walk and talk ourselves through that process until we are in contact with ice water. And then there is emerging experience of our anticipations. When there is an, an other, the other person, we then look at complexity of two complex systems coming together. And as a systems thinker, I used to be an engineer. I used to be an ethical hacker in my previous career. And so I love thinking systems. So when we put then two complex systems together, there always will be unpredicted outcome. Something we will never, no matter how much you gear yourself for a slab, you cannot predict the drive in another person of the slab, the velocity of the slab, the physics of the slab, and then the chemistry of the contact, how your body chemically and then emotionally will actually react to the contact. So it complicates things when we interact with another. We then bring two complex systems together, which create more complex and chaotic outcome. And by chaotic, unpredictable.
Yeah. Slava, I feel that it's time to learn a little bit more about you because we started the conversation getting into this really fascinating topic. But just for the folks listening, you've already mentioned in a tantalizing way some of your sort of past and being you mentioned Gestalt, you mentioned systems thinker, ethical hacker, which I'm really curious about. And so I'd love to talk about this essay that you wrote as well, but I wonder if maybe first you could give us a little flavor of how you got to who you are today and who is Slava Sapershteyn.
Oh, this is the hardest part, hilariously enough. Slava Sapershteyn. I am a registered Gestalt psychotherapist and graduate from Gestalt Institute of Toronto, into which I came out of this emerged necessity. Oh my God, what am I gonna do for the next 30 to universe willing 50 years of my life? So at the age of 47, it became very clear I don't want to work with computers. I don't want to work with computing systems, sitting in a cubicle, as I call them, the cubicles. And I bravely decided to do a radical career change. What drove me towards Gestalt psychotherapy is love for philosophy. I have always, not always, but in my 30s, I really got into reading philosophy and works of Deleuze and Guattari and Foucault and Jung and like many others. And the passion for philosophy really drove my passion for humanity. And I consider myself a humanist. And I decided to change career and studied for 5 years, and I keep studying. It's an ongoing process. And then in the parallel with, yeah, and like I mentioned before, I grew up in Soviet Union. I was born in late 60s and really got a taste of Cold War and Soviet regime and whispers, secrets under closed doors, and that whole kind of oppressive in its own way culture and system. And I immigrated to Toronto, to Canada when I was 20 years old with a toddler child in my arms, my daughter, who was only like just over a year, and raised her by myself in downtown Toronto. And I've done all kinds of works. I've been involved in sex work. I've been involved in like high end jobs on Bay Street wearing Gucci's and Armani's and Versace's. And then luckily I got exposed and introduced into underbelly of this culture in my late 30s. And that was a really lucky stars for me. It changed my relationship to Canada as a settler. It changed my understanding of history of this country, and the underbelly of the culture really exposed me to circus, to artists, to musicians, and eventually drove me into becoming a space maker for the artist. One of the things that I really treasure is creating spaces for people. It's what I'm good at. And it's kind of part of my presence as a Gestalt therapist. And jumping back in parallel, going to school, I have became a co-founder of land-based collective in Ontario, a few hours outside of Toronto, travel east, and that land collective processes and being in a relationship with nature so closely really solidified my understanding of the wholeness of the healing potentials of human journey. And it deeply helps me as a therapist in my own practices, in my own grounding, in my own healing, and in ability to create spaces for people ongoing.
Beautiful summary of everything you do. Really good job. Because it's complicated. But so diving into one aspect of what you just mentioned, the essay that you shared with me focuses on the mushroom, and your relationship to the mycelial world as a sort of metaphor, but as a reality also. So I wonder if we could jump into that, because it's a really fascinating essay where you're really talking about the mycelial networks and how they offer a model for us in our work as maybe community facilitators or space holders, as you just described. Can you tell us what is the core of that essay? Sort of what is at the point?
Yeah, the core of the essay, and it's a still working document. I'm still working on this, but basically, I'm not a professional mycologist in any way, shape, or form. I am a myco enthusiast. I have been picking mushrooms since I was a little girl. That's part of my culture and where I come from. We're taught that as children. And so I've always had fascination with mushrooms. I also have a relationship specifically with psilocybin as well in my own life. But the ongoing relationship with mycelium and mushrooms, both cultivating as well as wild foraging, I found a really incredible parallel between mycelium network and Gestalt field theories, and I can go into that a little bit more, and then the behavior, human behavior, how we organize ourselves, right? And how we either give to create resilience or we fall apart. And mycelium is the reason it attracts me is because it is one of the oldest organisms on our planet. And it literally surrounds pretty much entirety of our land space on the planet Earth. It's one of the widest and oldest webs of connection.
Right, because they're just everywhere underneath.
It's everywhere underneath, right? And so in this paper that I am working on, I explore the parallel between mycelium as an organism and the way that it organizes itself and the way that it creates resilience and creates reciprocity in its own network while being in the togetherness and interdependence. And I think the togetherness and interdependence is quite a challenging thing in our human journey to grasp and to be in. And so there's that part. And then looking at mycelium through the Gestalt lens and Gestalt principles like field theory, contact boundaries, organismic self-regulation, like all these parts exist in the behavior of mycelium, right? And all these parts are the parts that we're longing for to exist in ourselves as human beings. Like we want to understand, our boundaries. We want to understand what contact with another human being is. We want to be able to self-regulate, etc., etc. And overall, we want a sense of belonging as well. And so everything we do as human beings is relational.
Yeah.
Everything that mycelium does is very much relational.
Let's talk about that and the idea of contact, which is a word that comes up frequently in the essay and
Mm.
for you. What is it working closely with the land and with fungi? It seems has informed you and shifted your understanding of what it means to be in contact with others, especially in moments of tension, perhaps, or conflict. What could you speak a little about how it's informed or changed your own understanding of what contact means?
Yeah. So let me use maybe art as example of contact,
Yeah.
because it might be the simplest complex way. So you go to a gallery and you find a painting. It calls your name. You look at the painting. While you look at the painting, something's happening in you, right? So the artist painted that painting, and that painting can hang on a wall for years and years. But and until a person sits in front of it, looks at it, and then feel something's happening. There's emotion that is happening. When we say art touched you, it art created a contact in you. Something moved in your being. So from the Gestalt perspective, that's the contact. That's what we call contact.
I see.
The art itself is just it's a painting. It only becomes tangible in that way as a piece of art when it contacts somebody. Because another person can walk right by it and do nothing, feel nothing. It won't.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I mean by, and that's what Gestalt perceives as a contact, right? It's a moment.
So what does this teach us about connection, human connection, and having better relationships?
Yeah. I think, you know, what it teaches us, for example, you and I can have dialogue and conversations about all kinds of things, but there already have been and might still be without expectations are moments when you really are something moves in you. Something goes, oh, that's the content. So when we connect with people, again, let's say you're in argument with your partner about something, right? The argument is heated up. You're all trying to make your point, and then you hear the right words, or you experience a movement toward you in the middle of a fight. That's the content. That's what makes all the difference. That's what suddenly can put out the fire in a relational enhanced moment. The context is about, we use that phrase all the time, I want to be seen.
Right. Yeah.
But when we talk about I want to be seen, what do we mean by that? It's What do we mean by that? It says a felt experience, and it's minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And many things affect that. But I'm conscious of going through my life day to day, observing to what extent I feel seen, right? As a human, I feel valued, maybe, or feel acknowledged, and lots of tiny things affect that. If you saw it as a graph through the day, there'd be like, oh, this little thing happens and my feeling of value and being seen drops down. And then something else happens and it kind of goes way up and I feel really good. And then it comes back down, and it's going up and down constantly, right? Whether I'm on the screen, I'm on Facebook, I'm watching a family across the other side of the street who seem happy, or I'm having a conversation with you, or I'm reading an email. Like every single little tiny experience has some impact, I feel like, on that scale of how much I feel seen. A lot of that is I think determining how happy I feel, happy, like content in myself.
Yeah. It involves your state of being. It involves you being receptive to be seen. We're not always receptive to that. Sometimes people see us, but we don't want to be seen. There's so much. Again, the complexity of human system is so vast and so multi-textured and multicolored, and so yeah, it's like somebody can ongoingly give you compliments. You're an amazing clown. You're an amazing this. You're an amazing this. You're really knowledgeable. But there's going to be one person saying something that actually makes you feel connected in that way to yourself. That's the content. That's when you feel seen. It's a movement in the body, a felt experience.
Let me take a moment to tell you about the world's first and #1 online membership for clowning, Clown Spirit Village. Maybe you're just starting to dip a toe into the clowning world and you're hungry to know more. Maybe you've been doing it for years and you want to take the next step, integrate it into your life. Maybe make a show or start clowning full time. Maybe you're an experienced professional looking to rekindle your connection to clowning, to challenge yourself to grow and evolve. Whatever it is, Clown Spirit Village has you covered. Let me just give you the headlines here. First, we have over 30 recorded workshops and masterclasses with experts from all over the world. People like Jeff Johnson, Hilary Chaplin, Holly Stoppett, Moshe Cohen, Sky DeSella, and more. Each month, there's a live Zoom workshop for members that gets added to this growing archive. Second, there's our Clown Spirit courses, Awaken Your Clown Spirit, The Clown Connection, and Create Your Clown Masterpiece. Each one is carefully curated to help you along your clown journey. And each of those would cost around $150 if purchased separately. Finally, we have our coaching sessions every week where you can come along and get advice and feedback on your own projects and goals. The truly amazing part of this is that you get all of that for a single all-inclusive price that starts at just $29 a month, which drops to the equivalent of $25 a month if you pay annually. But perhaps most importantly, By joining Clown Spirit Village, you're not just investing in your own clowning future. You're making change happen by contributing to a movement that is bringing clowning into the world to create more joy, lightness, and connection in people's lives. Check out the details at www.clown-spirit.com/village. We're waiting for you here in the village. And now, back to the podcast. There's a relationship between Gestalt and clowning that I've seen be quite rich, because for me, clowning is a sort of a relational space. And I should just mention to the listeners that Slava is wearing a very cool jester's hat, or it has
It's a mystical bison hat.
a mystical bison hat. There we go.
I call this a mystical bison, mystical blue bison.
The mystical blue bison. It is a glorious thing. I think I'll take a screenshot and we'll use a picture of you wearing this hat on the cover of the podcast. But tell us a little bit about this hat before we jump into talking about clowning, because it is a really cool thing. It has these white horns sticking out the side, this beautiful blue fur all over it. And then it has objects stuck.
Okay.
I know some of them are very adult.
Also, yeah, there is adult content on this regalia for sure.
Tell us a little bit about what some of those things mean. They all have some meaning.
They all have some meaning. In the back of my regalia, I have Mad Hatter. This is a Mad Hat. It has to have Mad Hatter on it. I have one of my favorite quotes, as I mentioned, is well-behaved women seldom make history. I believe it's Anais Nin quote. I might be mistaken. I can't remember by now.
Yeah.
I have flowers and feathers. Some of these feathers came from my own chickens that I now have also. I have this little wooden character. I call him Shaman Rabbit, and he is carved out of the wood. He's like a really wise bunny. I don't know.
So how did clowning call you? Have you always felt like a clown from these early days when you were living in the Soviet Union? And where does humor come into your life, and how has that evolved over time?
Fundamentally, humor is a savior, right? If we look through the history of tribes, people who suffered incredible injustices and incredible oppressions. Not gonna go into it, but it is humor that saves us again and again. If we can retain sense of humor, if we can tap into satire about whatever dire situation we find ourselves in, right? It helps us. It helps us overcome pain, overcome grief, overcome fear. And I think, ability to be humorous or look at things through that lens, it really creates resilience in us and allows us to survive the most dire situations. And then I think the big part of the clowning, at least through Gestalt lens, is using metaphors. Metaphors is such a fantastic way to peel yourself a little bit away from your own skin, to be able to look at something through the metaphor, through something else, right? And create that path, create that connection. So it allows us to talk about something without so much judgment when we use a metaphor, right? I'm bad. How am I bad? What is the character that I know that it presents this part of me? This part of me as somebody who misbehaves or pushes against, right? Who is this? Is it like the Pippi Longstocking, wearing rags and feathers and unmatched things, right? How am I Pippi Longstocking? What Pippi Longstocking is about? As an example, so when we use metaphors, we can look at things with humor, with a different gaze, and we can then make it relatable to our own struggle or our own judgment. And instead of pushing part of ourselves away, we weave the relationship to our struggles, the relationship to our rebellion, the relationship to our dire situations through a different way rather than wearing it so closely like a second skin. Creates spacious.
Yeah, I love that as a metaphor in itself. The spaciousness, this peeling back of skin, the distance we can get from ourselves. How has this affected your own? How does this show up in your own life? This clowning humor.
Yeah, how does it show up in my own life? Okay. Yeah, I'll give an example that probably a lot of people can relate to. I live with ADHD, right? And I used to have a very judgmental relationship, frustrating relationship with this part of myself that can't focus. I start folding socks in my drawers, and I end up, for some reason, with a chainsawing things. I don't know how I got there, and I would get really frustrated with myself. And so e- eventually I I invited that part of myself in through the metaphor of I call it a little hurricane swirl. Oh, I can feel the swirls happening. I can feel the swirl is coming on. W- How can I be with the swirl without judgment? What does swirl do? It's swirling around. That's how it feels in me. And so I will go and I will put a dress on that has a really heavy skirt, almost Sufi, the Sufi skirts,
Yeah.
and big wide. And I put that dress on and I start swirling and I
Mm.
start dancing, right? So let's be with the swirl. What and as I swirl, what it does, it actually, instead of rejecting this part of myself, eventually I will ground myself down. I will swirl enough until I drop on the floor in the swirl, in the dizziness of it, right? And I allow it to just ride itself out, right? So I am the storm. I am a little hurricane. I am a little swirl. And if I be with it, if I allow it in and dance with that metaphor, then I create possibility of grounding. And once I catch my breath, I can take the dress off and I can find a place of focus.
Wow. Yeah. So you can do it for yourself, which is a great gift and a power. And I presume that in your work, you also help other people to find those ways to ground themselves or to express in a metaphor or to
Yeah.
find distance.
Yeah, like one of the very permanent kind of ways to go through therapeutic experience is, I don't know if you've heard of like external family systems, internal family systems,
Yeah.
family constellation, etc., etc. So if you think of yourself having internal family, so the presence of the voices that always come up, the parts of yourself that are this or that, right? Most of the time we want to reject them. Most of the time we want to push these parts away from ourselves. It's annoying, it's frustrating, it's depressing, it's whatever. And what are the other options we have? be in a relationship with ourselves, actually, and be in a relationship with all our parts, right? If I like, there is a part of me that is Dr. Slappenshine, and I use it as a metaphor. It's a nickname. I'm not a doctor. I just want to say it out loud. I'm registered psychotherapist. Dr. Slappenshine has a character, has a presence, and not always likable. But if I invite her for dinner and have a conversation with her, instead of rejecting her, I find the good parts. I find things that are necessary to exist for me, right? Where uh, they emerge from somewhere. And so the point is that if we can find a character, even for the most despicable parts of us, character from a book, character from a movie, a fictional character, a real character, right? Name that part of ourselves, assign the name, and then invite them actually for dinner. Have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. What are you about? It creates that metaphorical relationship where it's, I'm peeling this away from me a little bit. I'm creating a little bit of space between myself and this one of the parts of myself, and where I can now have a conversation instead of constantly rejecting or judging, etc., etc.
Mm.
That's how internal family system processes work with some of the therapists, for example, or in my therapy. And yeah, it just allows a little bit of m- more relationship rather than the relationship of rejection of self.
I wonder, what is your perspective on the state of the world right now and what is required from this world that you inhabit, or that maybe some of our listeners inhabit, of whether we want to call it shamanic practice or spiritual practice or relational practice or clowning and humor, relationship to the land, the healing practices maybe collectively, and how do you feel that there is a role for you and these practice in helping the the world or humanity? Do you feel called in this particular moment to try to use these tools and practices you have to generate healing in the world which so needs it at the moment?
Yeah, I perceive emerging things as responses to the systems, responses to, like, people can see, it can feel anxiety, or anxiety is a problem, right? As an example, we perceive anxiety. I'm anxious, it's a problem. I'm depressed, it's a sickness. For me, it's useful to look at these things as healthy responses from our complex bodily systems to what is happening in the world,
Yeah.
or what is happening in our culture, what is happening in society, what is happening in the relationship. Right? For me, depression is a system's response. There is a merit to experiencing such a thing. So, what is it about? How can, if we then stop judging it as a sickness and start looking at it as a healthy response of the system to something? So, what is it responding to? Why do we respond in this way rather than something else? And in that, we can move in that. We can become explorers, we can become curious
Yeah.
rather than judgmental. And curiosity is one of the most treasured parts of a human for me. period. Curiosity overrides fear. Curiosity overrides stagnation. Curiosity is a movement, and any movement is good thing. That sense.
Movement of the mind.
Movement of the mind, movement of the breath, movement of, again, if I'm curious, then it is unlikely that I'm going to be judgmental. If I am curious, then it's likely that I'm going to be in a place of listening because I'm in a state of curiosity. And I think curiosity is such a huge part of change, a huge part of possibility. And so if I am having or experiencing certain thing in my body or in my mental health, being curious, b- naming it as a system's response to something, and then be curious about what is this? What am I responding to? What is happening? Can lead us to a better understanding and likely possibility of moving through or healing something.
That
I
I'm
hope that
pretty clear.
answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't, in your materials, your website and so on, don't call yourself a clown, but I can see that you really identify strongly with it. And I'm curious how you wear that hat. Do you show up in public spaces dressed up as a clown? And if so, what is the intention of that, and what is the role that you play?
Yeah, I think the mystical blue bison, first and foremost, is a gatherer of humans. I love gathering humans together. The mystical bison is a storyteller around the fires, whether it's children or adults. Mystical bison carries both humor and tragedy. But this is a creature that is relentlessly seeking joy, while also having tremendous empathy for a human journey. And the human journey is not an easy one, no matter how much you slice it and how well you're off. Right? And so between compassion for the life being lifey as a human experience and relentlessly seeking joy, there's a lot of clowning to get done.
Beautiful. I love that. I never heard that expressed in quite that way before, that the empathy and compassion for human condition and this relentlessly seeking joy in that space.
I think that for me, I think that's fundamental is the makeup of the clown, the makeup of the jester. We see the tragedy. We feel the tragedy. We see the tragedy. We witness it. We understand it. In as a clowns, we go below and we go above. And if we succumb to tragedy, we're done as a human species. If we seek joy in spite of tragedy, if we can create it, if we can feed that little sparkle of fire, those little coals that are inside of every one of us, we'll find the tinders, the fire feeders. I think we'll find them through the relentless desire of experiencing, wanting to experience joy, wanting to experience love, wanting to experience connection, playfulness, spontaneity. In a regimented, demanding culture that we're in, what are we holding on to if not possibility for joy? Now, I don't mean by that that I'm always happy. That's so not true. I'm not. But it is in spite of tragedy and in spite of unhappiness, finding joy within self with others, in a relationship with nature, in a movement, is what not only keeps us alive, but creates resilience in us.
Beautiful. I feel just what you said in the last few minutes is powerful, that it feels like no more could be said. So I would like to just leave it there,
Yeah.
and with that beautiful thought. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your rich experience and wisdom around all these topics. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, thank you for creating an opportunity to talk about these things that are also so important. So important. Thank you for keeping this platform and for inviting me into this conversation. I really appreciate this possibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes me want more. So thank you.
So there you have it. I just feel so privileged and honored to be able to talk to these incredible, intelligent, experienced, insightful, wise people so frequently for this podcast. It really is a gift. And many of them, I would just like to say, are coming to us thanks to Dan Rudolph, my amazing buddy and co-conspirator here at Clown Spirit and Clown Spirit Village. So thanks, Dan, and thanks, Slava, because she was no exception. Absolutely insightful and inspiring. I particularly just enjoyed her quiet, playful spirit. She was a true clown spirit. I hope you'll join us again for another podcast very soon. Each week, I release a new podcast. Sometimes it's me talking to a guest, and sometimes it's just me rambling, talking about clown-related stuff. Also, sometimes we revisit old clownversations and bring them to this podcast platform. So whoever you are and wherever you are, thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you listen to it on. Please give us a like, give us a review, share it with your friends. Let's keep the clown love coming and unleash as many clowns into the world as possible. Have an amazing day. And of course, as always, keep clowning.